just a minute. The
Good
babysitter
evening
just got
and
here.
welcome to the Tuesday Tea Time for St Andrews Golf Magazine. This week I'm joined by Les Bailey of Pro Golf Now, Elizabeth Bethel of Pro Golf Now, and her very famous parrots. This week we'll be talking about the Valspar Championship and the Lala Merlin Cup in Morocco. We had wins for John Senden, his first on the PGA Tour for 8 years, and Charlie Hull, her first career win of what is turning into a promising start. We'll also be previewing the Founders Cup on the LPGA Tour, the first domestic event in America, and the Arnold Palmer Invitational, as well as rounding up some of the news of the day, including the changes to the Race to Dubai format. And we'll be discussing whether player power is affecting the game for the better or for the worse. So last week, the Valspar Championship, the third leg of the Florida Swing, took place on the Copperhead course at Innisbrook. John Senden unexpectedly came out on top at the end. His first win on the PGA Tour for 8 years, and I think it's his first win anywhere since the Australian Open of 2006. Les, I think you probably saw most of it, but I mean the chip in towards the end was pretty spectacular. But
yes, it was.
Players seemed to fall away, didn't they?
Well, Robert Garrigus had a full day. I mean, he come out of the gates looking a little bit like Tiger this year. I mean, couldn't find a fairway, and he was 5 over par in 6 holes. So made 2 double bogeys and a bogey. So he just dropped off the leaderboard within the first 5 holes. So he wasn't much of a threat. The guy that I thought might come and nip in the end there was Kevin Na. He was playing pretty good.
Well, we saw obviously the remarks by Robert Garrigus about playing with Kevin Na. They both affected each other.
Yeah. I think the moment got to Robert Garrigus. He got to thinking too much about winning and not keeping his mind on his putting stroke or his golf swing. I mean, Kevin Na is a pain in the butt to play with, and everybody says that, but everybody says the right thing politically, that he's getting better, and he's got more moves than some of the baseball players we see in the U.S. when they're trying to bat. But
I think it's actually time. I mean, when you take yourself back to Congressional and when Rory Sabatini walked away from Ben Crane, and everybody condemned Sabatini for it, but I have to say that unless this problem of slow play is sorted out, golf is going to die a very slow and painful death.
Oh, it is.
I when I was at the St Andrews Links Trophy last June, I walked around with a friend of mine, and the pace of play for these elite amateurs who are youngsters, they're never looking for a ball, it's absolutely terrible. I mean, it really is poor. And the same again with a college group that I went around with the old course a few weeks ago. The pace of play, young people who aren't looking for balls, they're very talented guys, they're hitting the fairways, and the pace of play is abysmal. And we have to single out these guys on the tour that are really taking their time.
Well, you find it every week when you go to the golf course locally. The guy on the green's got a 4-foot putt, and he's got to do what Tiger Woods does, and that's look at it from every angle, plumb the green, and then miss the putt. Run it 5 feet past and do it all over again. That's horrible. What I think is wrong is when they start talking about putting people on the clock, is sometimes the other guy in the group who's trying to play fast gets penalized too, and that's wrong. So until they start singling out one certain guy and hurting his pocketbook a little bit, it's not going to change. I mean, what was it? The Masters last year, they picked on the kid from China, and gave him a penalty stroke for playing slow, and it was the only penalty stroke they've given away in 15 years. They pick on some kid from China that's 14 years old, and now they're playing with, having to hit rescue clubs to every green because he doesn't have the power for the golf course.
Yeah.
So let's
it's
pick
pretty
on
shocking.
him, you know.
It
Make
really is. It's not a good example for golf to be setting when you've got these top players week in week out taking 5-6 hours for their rounds when they're playing in 2 balls on the weekend. And I think Kevin Na isn't popular just purely because of his slow play, and it does impact on his playing partners because you can't get into a routine because you're always waiting.
Right. I know it drives me nuts on the golf course having to wait.
You know,
Have you guys read a book called Zen Golf?
no, I haven't.
No,
No.
you haven't. Well, you need to, because Zen Golf talks about this, and it talks about how we waste a lot of energy, a lot of mental energy as golfers, tapping our feet and shaking our heads at slow players, when in fact we could be using that time to meditate, concentrate on our own mental game.
I don't want to meditate. I want to hit my next shot. I can meditate later when I don't have anything else to do.
Amazing. Well, I think there's probably a valid point that obviously players can be using that time more wisely. But if they're like Robert Garrigus, who is a pretty decently paced player, if you're playing with a guy that feels like he's got all day to play the round, it's going to upset your rhythm. And obviously, Kevin Na nearly won, but I think the pace of play is a big issue, and fines certainly won't do anything about it because they're all millionaires. I think it has to come down to shots. It really does, and not just one shot.
Well, it's like anything. You have to get in the player's pocketbook if you're going to get their attention. That's simple as that. That's, in all professional sports, when they've actually wanted to change something, they've had to really get in a player's pocketbook and get in it deep. $500 fine for a guy that's making $3 or $4 million a year is not. That's a proverbial slap on the wrist. That's not a threat of any kind.
How much do you want to fine them, Les?
Well,
$10,000 a minute. You want to?
No. It goes back to strokes. When you take strokes away, you cost money, and at some point in time, you say, hey, you're behind. You've been behind for an hour, but don't find the guy that's playing with him that's stuck for the day. Yeah. Find the guy that's doing it. Kevin Na has had and Kevin Na even admits that he's got a mental problem of pulling the trigger at times. He stands up over there and he just can't bring himself to hit the darn shot. So get in his pocketbook a little bit, force him to get back into some. I guess he's going through some mental training to try to overcome it, but let's put a little added pressure on him. Let's get in his pocketbook a little bit. Send him back to his therapist a little more often.
Oh my God!
Have his therapist caddying for him.
Yeah.
Have his therapist caddying.
Have his therapist caddying. Yep.
So John Sandon, this is a guy who's a very talented golfer. He usually plays well for the first 2 days, and then has a bad weekend, or gets even to Sunday and has a poor final round. But this time he came from behind, and he came to win on a very difficult golf course, as he did actually at Royal Sydney in 2006.
Right.
The guy's got some game and a very, very experienced player. But do you think this is possibly just a flash in the pan? He's probably not going to go on from here and prove himself to be better.
Well, I don't think so. I think he's what is he? 43 years old. He's had some physical issues that's hampered some of his career. I think he won the John Deere Classic in, what was it, 2006 as well.
Yeah.
And he's a journeyman golfer. That's never going to be a real threat.
No, I think you're right there with him. He's probably that tier below the top Australian golfers, and he's spent most of his career making a lot of money, but not particularly having great success.
Right, right.
So last week in Morocco, you had the dual event where you had the Hassan Trophy d'Or, which was a men's event in Morocco, and at the same time the Al Aluminium Cup, which is a ladies' European Tour event. And we discussed at length who we thought would be victorious. And as ever, our expert on the women's game was hoping, I think, rather more than expectation. But Charlie Hull came out on top. It's her first win of her career. She's now moving on from that successful 2013 where she made her debut for the European team in the Solheim Cup. And this could be the start of something big, couldn't it, Elizabeth?
Well, it could be, but then, it could also be nip and tuck and backwards and forwards and one step forward and two steps backwards. And I mean, you know how golf goes, but I'm glad she has her win under her belt. Now, that's the first step, is to break through that I'm a rookie and I need a win barrier, and she's done it now. We all knew she could. I mean, she's a power player.
She's got the game, and I think that it's good that she's won on the Ladies European Tour. She can now hopefully win another couple of times this year. I think she's in the Kraft Nabisco field in a couple of weeks, so she'll have a chance to take a game onto the fairways of America and compete in a majors championship. And then hopefully this year is one of consolidation. Now she does do well for the rest of the year, and then moving forward with the LPGA.
Do you see her going to the LPGA?
I think it more than in the men's game. In the men's game, the European Tour can compete with the PGA Tour for prize money at the end and in some events throughout the summer. But the Ladies European Tour gets absolutely nowhere near what you have on the LPGA Tour. So I think it has to happen, because if you want to be one of the best players in the world, you have to play on LPGA.
You do. I mean, that's true ultimately. But I also keep thinking about what her dad said last January, February, right after she turned pro, and somebody asked him about sponsors. Does Charlie have any sponsors yet, and what are her plans for the future? And he was fairly clear that he wanted her to go slow. He wanted her to enjoy her late adolescence and enjoy playing golf, and said all those things would come later. So I don't think Charlie Hull's in any hurry to move to the LPGA. I really don't. I think she's probably getting a lot of encouragement to enjoy where she is right now.
I think you're right, but what I would say is there's a young man by the name of Shane Lowry, who is an Irish golfer. He was a promising amateur player in Europe, and his plans were to play in the 2009 Walker Cup for Great Britain and Ireland, and he won the Irish Open as an amateur, and that accelerated his progress, and he had no option really to turn pro. And I see a similar thing with Charlie Hull, the fact that she's had success now. She's played in the Solheim Cup. She could go over to Kraft Nabisco in a couple of weeks and perform really well. Then you've got the Women's Open, which is also LPGA, if she did well on that. The Evian as well. Those events, if she does well or if she wins, she's got to go to the LPGA full time. She can't turn that opportunity down, I don't think.
Well, there's an old saying in life that you need to strike while the iron's hot, and when you're winning or you're playing close to the top of the game, maybe that's the time to make the move.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's just my opinion.
Well, I know, but she's 17 years old. For heaven's sake.
Of course. I would agree with the way that her father wants her to go, but if you succeed in these big events, the pressure is going to be immense. The sponsors will come. The sponsors will come.
I mean, that's the same decision that Lydia Ko had to make. I mean, she had to go away and decide whether she wanted to be a pro golfer, and she did. And when she made the decision, she went ahead and took the plunge, So
Oh, Les, I think that the comparison is not fair. I mean, I think Lydia Ko was moved to make that shift by factors other than, I mean, Charlie Hall says, pro golf's where I belong because I'm good. She's just filled with self-confidence, and she loves competition, but she's not driven by money. And I think Lydia Ko was. I mean, Lydia Ko says, it's very different now. Every shot is about money.
yeah,
I mean, I don't think Lydia Ko made that decision by herself, is what I'm saying.
yeah, probably not.
Nor do I think the motive was, this is where I belong because this is the career I want. I think there were other factors that maybe Charlie doesn't have.
I think that's a fair. It's a fair argument, isn't it? And it can be that players, when they're young and they're amateurs, they do it for the enjoyment of the game, and then they come out onto the pro circuit, the money starts coming in, and they just can't cope. And players have a different mentality and motivation. Tiger's motivation is to win tournaments and win majors. And I think Charlie Hall's the same. Her motivation is to do that. But I think the gap between the LET and the LPGA is so big that just in depth of field and prize money and quality of golf course, I think it's inevitable, and it may happen at the start of next year, personally, I think.
Well, we'll watch it unfold and think back on this conversation and shove it down each other's throats.
Which brings me to a question. Why didn't you pick Charlie Hall in the Ladies Dream Golf League?
I thought I did. Who did I pick?
I don't know, but you didn't win.
I think I picked Charlie, but there was somebody else down the line. I think I also picked Maha, what's her name, the Moroccan, and she missed the cut. And no, I think I think I picked Charlie, but a couple of other picks were not so good. I had Charlie and Laura Davies, and then I had 2 holes in my card.
Oh.
Yeah.
So this week on the LPGA Tour, the LPGA's Founders Cup tournament, the first event in America this year. We've had events all over the world, Asia Pacific, and now moving into Arizona for the Founders Cup. It's good for the LPGA Tour to be back on American soil, isn't it, Elizabeth?
I think so. And the Founders Cup is a nice way to start. You know, they're doing all kinds of good stuff. I don't understand why Pro Golf now doesn't have me out there covering it on site. I need to be there, Les.
Well, we can apply for credentials for you, Elizabeth.
Well, could you? I didn't even think about St. Andrews.
Yeah, we could do. Let me give some thought to that, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, his budget's bigger than mine is.
Oh my goodness!
I don't have a budget.
No, no, the budget's very similar, Les.
Credentials are free. You know,
Yes,
that's
yeah. It's about getting access to the event.
Yeah. Well, get me in there. Get me in there, Matt. I'll do something good for you.
Brilliant. I'm assuming this week it's a strong field, as with starting first event in America. They're all wanting to build up to the Kraft Nabisco now.
Oh, it's like a powerhouse. I don't even know how to place my Ladies Dream Golf bets right now.
I shook. I had my finger over Stacey Lewis because didn't she run away with this event last year?
Yeah, she did.
And I shook the mouse a couple times, and it went and picked NB Park.
Oh my God! I keep waiting for Ricari to do something. You know, Ricari has fallen off the cut line too many times, and I can't figure out what's going on with her.
Well, hopefully the positive vibes of St Andrews Golf Magazine helps us to win, because we interviewed David Howell and he won at the Dunhill. So we interviewed Beatrice Shikari as well. So hopefully she'll win soon.
I hope so. I hope so.
There you go. There you
she's
go.
very talented, and she's won a couple of times already. So she's certainly got the game. But when she came to St Andrews, she really did. Well, she slumped. She finished dead last, I think. So she's very much in and out, I think, in terms of when she wins and when she contends. But she's certainly got the game, I would say.
But Inby is hot. I mean, Les is right. She came out of the gate hot. Pedersen's not going to catch her because Pedersen's she's focused way too much on catching her and not enough on outplaying her. I don't know about Stacy. Can she putt this week?
That's
always an if.
I think that's an if for any golfer. If they're
Probably.
putting, they're making money. If they're not putting,
Yeah.
Sam Snead was right. You know, you drive for show and putt for dough.
Yeah. So the question is, whose putter is working?
Well, Inby Park's putter is usually always working, so that's why I took her.
Okay.
I think on desert golf courses as well, that's what it comes down to eventually. I mean,
right.
Fairways have got wide. You've got to hit the greens. I mean, the trouble's usually, unless it's Dove Mountain, the trouble's right next to the fairway. But usually there's not much trouble. So, but it does come down to putting, and that is the main thing that's going to win the tournament.
Well, you know, I wrote a blog this week, and I had mentioned that while I was watching the Valspar the other day, somebody was mentioning why Jordan Spieth wasn't playing as well as he did last year. I mean, he's had some top 10 finishes this year. He's not playing that bad. He's just not winning anything.
No, I mean,
and
he's started well.
And Frank Noblo said that on an average, his approach shots are 5 feet further from the pin than they were last year, and that extra 5 feet is a killer. So the fact that you know, whoever's got a good iron game that's getting their, you know, hitting that approach shot in there 4 and 5 feet, and make a putt, that's the person that's going to win the golf tournament. I mean, that's what won Tiger Woods 5 tournaments last year. His iron game was laser sharp. I mean, he was piling that ball in there and giving himself a good look at a birdie putt, you know, instead of a 35-foot lag putt, which is what he's been doing most of this year.
Well, he's going to have an opportunity to get the ball closer to the hole this week at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Tiger's personal playground, as has been Dubai and Torrey Pines and Doral, and he's messed up all of them so far this season. So what do we expect from the invisible Mr. Woods at the Arnold Palmer Invitational this week?
Well, just same thing I just said. You know, if Tiger can, when Tiger hit the flagstick at number 15 last year at Augusta, that was a testament to how well his irons were last year. He was throwing that thing in there. I mean, he was on a roll. He was going to win that tournament. He was out to win the Masters until that snafu at 15, and he was doing it with sharp iron play. He was hitting a 3-wood off the tee and getting in position and hitting a nice approach shot that was leaving him makeable birdie putts, and he just happened to be making putts. You know.
Yeah, I mean that's everything. You've got to have pretty much everything on to win, I would say.
Right, right.
If you can't hit the fairway, or even the fairway opposite you, which he can't at the moment, it's very difficult. And a course like Bay Hill, it really is going to find him out. If he's not on his game the first couple of days, he will miss the cut.
Right.
So I mean, it's getting pretty serious. But then we've seen players before come out and win the Masters after not particularly doing anything for the first 3 months of the year. So it's not really a gauge on how he's going to do at Augusta. But it's worrying for him, because the worse he plays and the better that Adam Scott plays, the closer he gets to the world #1 spot. Scott's in the field this week, along with Patrick Reed, Graham McDowell, Bubba Watson, Snedeker, Rose, Stenson, Fowler, Poulter, and Keegan Bradley. So another really strong field.
It's a full field of top-notch players this week.
Yeah. No Rory McIlroy this week. And
no Rory McIlroy.
Where's Rory?
Well, probably in Florida practicing, I would say, or enjoying his lovely new house.
Rory played really well at the Bolero Texas Open last year. I'm sure he's got his sights set on one of those Texas tournaments.
Yeah, I would
to actually have a shot at winning.
I would say so. Also, Houston Open, I would say that is probably where he's going to go. Maybe he can go to Texas Open as well, but he's going to want to prepare for the Masters this year. He's playing well, and so maybe this is a good week for him to take off. He's not. I think he's played it once before, maybe twice before. It brings me on to the issue of player power, because a couple of years ago, I think it's Arnold Palmer pretty vocal in the omission of certain players from his tournament. I think Lee Westwood, Luke Donald, Rory, they all missed the tournament just because it didn't fit with their preparation for the Masters. And some of them have come back to play, some of them haven't. And obviously, we hear all the time that golfers are independent contractors, whatever that is, self-employed, but they are representing the game, they're representing their sponsors. They do have a responsibility to play in our biggest events. And the European Tour last year created a series of events at the end of the season, the final series of the Race to Dubai, big money events anywhere in the world, let alone on the European Tour. And the criteria that they set was that the players would have to play in at least 2 events preceding the final event in Dubai, one of which is a WGC, which counts for both tours. So in essence, they only had to play 1 extra event. And this rubbed Ernie Els, Sergio Garcia, and Charles Schwartzel up the wrong way. They didn't want to do that, and so they were missing from the final event of the season. They complained. They weren't missed, really. I mean, we had a strong field at the end of the year. The focus was on Stenson winning the Race to Dubai. But today, the European Tour has announced that the qualification criteria will be changed, and that they're going to redesign the point system as more of an incentive to play more than actually saying you have to play more. It'll be very interesting to see whether they do play more. And I think that players do have a responsibility. What do you guys think?
Well, goes back to what you just said. They're independent contractors, can play wherever they want to until they get some rules that have some teeth in them. They're going to keep doing what they're doing.
But
as far as I'm
PGA
concerned,
Tour tried, didn't they? The PGA Tour tried, I think, 2-3 years ago to bring in a mandatory event rule, and it was just rejected out of hand. Which is bad for the game, in my opinion. I think players should be playing more often.
Why? Why can't people decide when they want to play?
Imagine if, well, God bless Michael Schumacher. He's not dead yet, but the Formula One or NASCAR or any other sport, players said, okay, I'm not going to race this week, I'm not going to play this week. When they only play the maximum tournaments, they play at 25, 26 a year, they still have 25, 26 weeks off a year.
And what's wrong with that? I'm sorry, I'm missing the point.
Well, the thing that it hurts at times, Elizabeth, is the sponsors of the tournament who are expecting, a good field, and they wind up with, a field full of second-tier players.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously the event doesn't garner as much attention. I find validity in both arguments.
I think yes, there is an element to say that players should be able to decide whether they want to play. But when, for example, the World Golf Championships, FedEx Cup, Final Series, they're created as ways of rewarding the players, filling their pockets. They're created especially for the best players, because only the best players play in them. And then they still say, we're not going to play. I find that, I just think it's poor for the game. You look back in the era of Nicklaus and Palmer and play, and they would play many, many tournaments a year, and there wasn't the amazing travel that we have nowadays. There wasn't the money. There wasn't the amazing facilities for practice. Now there is. It's much easier for players now.
But don't you think players have been lured by the money? And when golf's been incentivized, and that's eroded the love of the game in many ways. I mean, we're back to the Lydia Ko, Charlie Hall conversation.
Yeah.
Is the monetary incentive if the monetary incentive is the only driver in participation, then people are bound to be disappointed because golfers aren't going to be drawn entirely by the money. So you've got to have people playing because they love the game and they want to promote it.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Bobby Jones was really the epitome of an amateur golfer that done something in this world. But Bobby Jones was also rich. He didn't have to have that money. Obviously, he didn't have to have it because he never took any of it.
Of course.
And he played it because he loved it, and he won the Grand Slam because it's something he wanted to do, you know. But he never took a dime to play the game. But he was also come from a rich family that had a lot of money, so he didn't have to have the money.
Well, he had
some of these players don't have that luxury, you know. I mean, look at Alexandria Cassie trying to get from tournament to tournament, and she can't afford the entry fee and the cost to get there, and you know, it's tough on some of these guys trying just to break in.
Well, it is hard to break in, and it's hard to sustain, and you know, it's a kind of an expensive hobby when you get down to it. No matter what level you're playing at, I'm trying to figure out what it costs to be a minimum level pro golfer on tour. The economics of the career choice, and so I think there has to be some way to support that. But at the same time, at the upper tier, particularly on the men's tours, we're talking gazillions of dollars. Gazillions.
Well, see, the PGA is doing something about this whole thing. That's what this wraparound schedule was all about, was to try to get people, the good players, to play more tournaments. And the good players are sitting out this year, and they're finding themselves way behind in FedEx Cup points right now because they didn't play at Hawaii and they didn't play at Riviera, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're paying a price. They're way behind in points. Maybe the European Tour needs to do some of that on the race to Dubai, you know.
Well, the European Tour season for this year started 2 weeks. In fact, it started 1 week after last year's finished. And we've always had a wraparound schedule for the last 10 years, I think. So I just think that maybe there's so much money in the game now that players need to select the bigger events. It isn't. The fact is that the HSBC Champions and World Golf Championship is bigger and more important for a golfer's career than an 18-hole exhibition match in the same country between Tiger and Rory. And they didn't play in the HSBC and went and played in that. And so I would say that when players moan about we have to play in these many events, and then Sergio Garcia, the 2 weeks after Dubai, goes and plays in the Thailand Golf Championship for a hefty appearance fee and wins it, you have to wonder why they're saying we can only play in one of those 4 events. I think that players, it disappoints me when they say that we can't play in this, but then they go and play an event that's not sanctioned by the PGA or European Tours, and it's not got a big prize fund, but they get personally a massive appearance fee to play.
Right.
And that damages the game because the Thailand Golf Championship, um, it isn't viewed by millions. It isn't viewed by thousands of spectators. It's not really shown on television much anywhere, and it doesn't really bring much its way of exposure to the game, whereas the HSBC in China does. So I personally think that players do have a responsibility, and with every event now being so cash rich, they don't just have to select the biggest purses. So
All I'm saying is that golf needs to be differently incentivized
yeah,
if, in fact, we're trying to reshape the participation pattern.
I
That's all
agree.
I'm
I
saying.
agree. Yeah, no, I totally agree, Elizabeth. It is down, in a big part to the organisers of the tours to produce a schedule which is better for all the players. They need to work together um, for the better of the game. And maybe these changes will do that, but you have to wonder at times whether it's George O'Grady and Tim Finchem running the game, or is it Tiger Woods and the top players. I think you have to say it is the top players that are really running the game.
Sure it is. But that's the case in any career, any profession. The top dogs are in charge. The top dogs set the rules.
Yeah.
I mean, golf is no different from an academic career and being a college professor. The top people set the rules.
Yeah, I would. I think you're right. You are right there. And it'll be interesting to see going forward whether players play more because, as you said, Les, the players that are playing so often at the start of the year are well behind on FedEx Cup. They're not taking advantage actually of Tiger's slump because they're not playing enough.
Right.
You know, if Rory had played 2 or 3 more tournaments, he might be closer. And if Adam's taken a break, he might have overtaken Tiger. So it'll be interesting to see for the rest of the year. So coming up next week, it's the end of the Florida Swing this week. We're moving to Texas next week for the Shell Houston Open, a tournament that prepares the players for the first major of the year. And also we'll be looking forward to the Eurasia Cup, which is coming up very soon. It's Europe against Asia, a controversial event which has been created alongside the Royal Trophy that was backed by Sevi. So there's a lot to talk about there. But it's going to be another great week in golf on both the men's and women's tours. But from myself, Hooper, and Les Bailey, and Elizabeth Bethel, it's good night.
Good night, guys.
Good
Cheers.
Good night.